So let me tell you about bread, because the bread that we're eating today is nowhere close to the type of bread that was around in the Lord's day. Let's look at the major differences really revolve around, number one, processing. In the old days, they would get a millstone and they would sprinkle the wheat down, and then they would put another one on top of it and rotate it, and that's known as stone ground. And from that, you get all of the bits and pieces, and you'll get maybe 70–80% of what's left after you get rid of the rough stuff, and that's how they made bread. Today, it's roller milled, so it's all industrial processed. And what they're able to do now is stream what comes out of the mill, so they can remove the middlings, they can remove the wheat germ and the oil and all the rest of it. And what you end up with is you can end up with this pure white flour. And the bread processing that they're using now, remember the whole idea of industrial manufacturers making cakes or biscuits, they want this stuff to be stretchy. So in order to do that, you've got to increase the amount of gluten in the bread. So now we've got wheat that's been hybridized to have at least a 50% higher gluten content, because if you didn't do that and you made a fairy cake with it, it'd fall apart. So industrial manufacturers love more gluten, but the problem with gluten is that it's really hard to get into the digestive system and break down. It clogs it up. Dr. Tom O'Brien, who's made a whole study of this, he says, you imagine a brick wall, and the whole purpose of digestion is to remove the mortar from between the bricks so you can reuse the bricks, the peptides, the amino acids to make more of you with. But the problem with bread or gluten is that it'd be a bit like if you got a sledgehammer and smashed the wall, you wouldn't get individual bricks, you get a big clump of 33 bricks which goes down, and that's when the damage begins. And if that gets into the bloodstream through a semi-permeable intestine, now you've got the immune system activated and all kinds of problems starting with that. So we've seen that modern bread has got fungal enzymes in it. It's not being allowed to ferment. See, bread was fermented for 24 hours to produce lactic acid bacteria, which assists in the digestion. None of that's happening. This stuff's being thrown in the back of the van warm on its way to the supermarket. It's fermenting in the van.
So what would you say, give it a typical breakfast table then, you know, toast, you know, somebody needs to put something very quickly together, and they just want to have some sort of bread very quickly with a cup of tea.
Toast is better than bread, isn't it?
Well, we're finding that it's the type of bread you're using. If you go and get, there's heritage wheat now that's out, which is the original wheat, of course, which is quite rare to get. But people are going back to making their own bread, Tim, because they just notice that if they're having that, or they'll cop out and do soda bread, or they'll do spelt. There's nothing inherently evil about wheat. It's not a particularly nutritious grain. If you look at wheat, barley, rye and oats, the wheat, barley and the rye tend to be causing some of the problems because these are the commercial brands that have been hybridized. But then, of course, the other problem you've got is they're stripping all of the nutrition out of it, and by law, they've got to start putting some of this back in. Thiamine goes back in, because otherwise you get beriberi. So all around Britain now, in the parks, you've got these signs that the RSPCA are putting up saying, do not feed white bread to the ducks, or you will give them vitamin deficiencies. But you old ducks, carry on eating it.
So would you recommend a particular type of bread?
Sourdough.
Sourdough?
Sourdough. Seems to be getting people off the hook.
Never heard of it.
If any, you've not heard of sourdough?
You've
obviously
I've
never been
shopping.
You've never been to New York. No, if you're having problems with bread, and you know what, again, some of the experts who've been studying this are showing that it could be up to 50 to 70% of the population could be exhibiting some sort of toxic reactions to gluten. At the top of the pyramid, you're going to have celiac and all of the problems associated with that. But as you come down the pyramid, IBS, there could be people who are just having digestion problems, skin eruptions and all the rest of it. What I say to people is, if you think you're having a problem with this, just drop it out of the diet for a week to 10 days. And lots of people feel very bloated.
I was going to say that, yes.
Because of the fungal enzymes that are in there, so they feel bloated after they've eaten it. So just go a few days without eating bread and see if you feel differently. And if you do, then what we need to do is go back to the original way that they were making bread back in Jesus' day.